Krishnadas composed a grammar of a Persian language under the instruction of Akbar, the Mughal Empire. And that grammar is called Parasika Prakasha. And this is how Panini's style transcended. Actually, Persian language is not an Indian language. So you can say Panini transcended boundaries of India. This unshaken belief in the Paninian way of study of language is a unique tribute paid by the linguistic tradition to this great grammarian. And as all of you know, and you can see the picture on the screen, the government of India also issued a stamp to commemorate Panini and his achievement. This picture of Panini, which is created over a period of time in our country, is that of the foremost grammarian of Sanskrit and a great intellectual. This is, however, the very first and primary introduction, most primary, I should say, to this intellectual giant. Several dimensions of his erudition have been gradually unfolded when Paninian studies crossed the boundaries of traditional schools and even the country. New approach to Panini's grammar began in the pre-colonial period and it continues to the present times. Western scholars as well as Indian scholars trained in modern methods of research tried to fathom the depth of this grammar by using various research tools which were till then not used. Their findings have shown that Panini is not just a grammarian of a certain language. They discovered in him the father of the theory of universal grammar, a mathematician, a computer programmer, and recently even a neuroscientist. Gradually, Panini's grammar appeared on the agenda of historians of linguistics, mathematics, and computer science. Well, I abstain from giving you details on all these points, but if you raise questions and if you want to know more about it, maybe we can talk about it later. The name Panini has now won an international acclaim, and he is being studied in different parts of the world in order to gain more insights into his accomplishments. The Ashtadhyayi is the only testimony to Panini's profound scholarship. My endeavor will be to take you closer to this gateway to this intellectual giant and to try to offer a glimpse into his edifice. So, with this introduction to the introduction, let me now turn to the points mentioned in my plan one by one. Before taking up Panini's grammar for our study, and that we are going to do from the next talk onwards, it is necessary to understand the status of the pre-Paninian linguistic thought in order to understand Panini's contribution more clearly. The history of the beginning of the science of language can be traced back to the earliest available literature, that is the Vedas. A cursory glance at the hymns of the Rig Veda shows, for instance, that the Vedic Aryans looked at speech with curiosity and felt that it was a divine gift. A sukta in the Rig Veda, in the 8th mandala, it is 100th sukta, it describes speech as a deity which the gods created. Devim vacham ajanayanta devaha. tam Vishwarupa Pashavo Vadanti. In another sukta, which is known as well known as Vak Sukta, Vak, the daughter of the sage Ambruni, describes herself as the creator of the universe. Ahameva Vata iva pravami arabhamana bhuvanani vishva. I blow like wind. I am the creator of this universe. The very idea of speech, giving a speech, is very exciting. The Vedic sages invested speech with the power of creation. Sabhuriti vyaharat, sabhumim asrujat. He uttered the word bhuhu and he created bhumi, that is earth. Why was speech so glorious and important for them? The roots of this veneration of speech can be traced in their attitude towards life. They felt that their life was controlled by gods in the heaven. In order to please the gods, they performed sacrifices. They believed that the oblation they offered in the fire of the sacrifice reached the gods and thus pleased them. Along with the oblations, they recited the mantras. And through the mantras, that is through the sacred speech, the Aryans or the priests or the Vedic people, they could connect themselves with gods. And therefore, the language of the mantras had to be very pure, correct in all respect, so that the gods could understand the language and they could understand their wishes, their purposes. So, correct, flawless pronunciation of the sacred language was necessary to ensure the reward of the sacrifice. And therefore, they set up a machinery to preserve the speech in all respects. This led to the birth of the science of phonetics and phonology, etymology of words, derivation of words and sentences, along with pitch and accent. So, several treatises called Shiksha, Pratishakya, Nirukta, and Vyakarana were composed, in which they described processes of articulation of sounds, generation of words from basic roots, etc. So these treatises are known as Vedangas, ancillary Vedic texts, and these texts guided the generations of Vedic priests in preserving the sacred speech, protecting it from contamination, impurities. Of course, I'm very much tempted to give details about the rules of phonetics and the process of phonetics, articulation of sounds, etc. Because it is really, I mean, if I give you these instructions I share with you, then it will be very interesting for you to listen to that. But I abstain from doing that once again, I say. And if time allows later on, and if you wish me to give you the details, we can do that later on. Of course, suffice it to say that the language experts during this early Vedic period had already discovered the fundamentals of speech science, and Panini thus inherited a rich tradition of linguistic analysis, including elements such as speech sounds, pitch, accent, root, suffix, sandhi, compounding, different types of word generation, parts of speech, and the steps involved in the journey of a word from a crude stem to a meaningful speech unit. Further, the fact that Panini was not a pioneer even in the area of grammatical composition is borne out by Panini himself. He directly mentions at least 10 names of his predecessors and acknowledges their views on different grammatical issues. And even though Panini doesn't mention the names of other grammarians, there are stray references to them which are found in other texts. And Yudhishthira Mimamsaka, a historian of Sanskrit Vyakarana, mentions as many as 85 names of grammarians, which speaks of a very rich grammatical tradition before Panini came into existence. So, in Panini's grammar, we come across references to Spotayana, Shakatayana, Shakalya, Senaka, Gargya, and Apishali, and a few others. Though the works of none of these grammarians are available today, Panini puts on record his indebtedness to all his predecessors through these references. Panini belonged to a later Vedic period. In fact, some scholars say that he stood on the threshold between the Vedic and the classical period. About his exact date and time, nothing can be said with certainty. And this happens with almost all earlier Sanskrit writers, including Kalidasa. It is generally believed that he lived sometime between 6th and 4th century before Common Era. Traditionally, he belonged to a place called Shalatura, which is identified as the village Lahore in Pakistan. Incidentally, I must tell you that when I was writing this small booklet on Panini, which is published by Sahitya Akademi, I did some correspondence with the then Director General of Archaeology of Pakistan, Dr. A.H. Dani, and I asked him whether there is anything called Panini's monument or Panini's birthplace and whether they have discovered it. And he sent me a very prompt reply. And in that reply, he told me that yes, they have identified this town called Lahore, not Lahore, as the birthplace of Panini. And he further told me that they were going to install a statue of Panini in the campus of Taxila University. I don't know whether the statue has come out. Those of you who can go to Pakistan who have already been to Pakistan could perhaps inform on this issue. And yes, he also wrote in his letter that they are going to start an institute also in the name of Panini. And one professor from US who came to university when I was there, she told me that yes, while passing through a road in Lahore, she found the name of an institute named after Panini. But this needs to be verified, of course. I don't know whether there is a statue of Panini anywhere in India. That also needs to be found out. Then there is a Karika cited in the Bhashya of Patanjali, the earliest commentator of the Ashtadhyayi. And this Karika says, Sarve Sarvapadadeshaha Dakshi Putrasya Paninehe. And therefore it is believed that Dakshi was the name of Panini's mother. But beyond that, we don't know anything about his life. And then there is Trikanta Shesha, a lexicon, probably belonging to the 12th century. And thanks to Lata Devkar, who gave me all this, passed on this information to me. This lexicon contains a verse enlisting names of Panini. And the names go like this. Paninis Twahiko Dakshi Putra Shalanki Paninau Shalo Turiyoth. And then Vyadi Vindhyasto Nandini Sutta is for Vyadi. So Panini, Ahika, Dakshi Putra, Shalanki, Paninu, and Shaloturiya, sometimes also called Shalaturiya, are the 6 names of Panini enlisted in a kosha. Panini, we know about Panini, they say he was the son of one Panin or even Pani. So maybe his father's name is Panin or Panino even. Anything can be the name. And then Ahika, there is no explanation for Ahika. Dakshi Putra, very clear. About Shalanki and Shaloturiya, the Tika which Lata sent me tells us that Shalanki means Shalankyam Bhavaha. So Shalanki is obviously the name of the place. And Shaloturiya also is explained as Shaloture Grame Bhavaha. That means Shalotura or Shalatura, maybe, was the name of that town where Panini lived. Then there are so many stories of Panini's life told in the narrative works, many ancient works, such as Katha Sarita Sagara and Haracharita Chintamani, and also some Puranas. After all, they are all stories. And according to these stories, Panini was a Mandabuddhi, dull-witted person in his childhood. He was a brother of Katyayana. He was the son of Varsha. He practiced penance because they started making fun of him. So he went to Himalayas and practiced penance and received knowledge of grammar as a boon from Lord Shiva. And Shiva also gave him the 14 Varna Sutras by beating his drum 14 times. Some of these anecdotes we are already acquainted with. The accounts found in the reports of the 2 Chinese travelers, Yuan Chuang and I Ching, however, tell us a different story. These 2 travelers visited India sometime during 6th and 7th and 8th century. And according to these reports, Panini was not a dull-witted person. On the contrary, he was very well informed since his childhood about linguistic facts. And he himself labored hard to collect linguistic data. And on that basis, he composed his grammar. And he wanted to improve upon the earlier existing grammars. And then he took the grammar to the then ruler. The ruler was very much pleased with the grammar. And then he announced 2 things. He announced that this grammar should be taught must be taught in all schools. And then he announced a great reward for those students who studied this grammar. So since then, I mean, we should believe in, because it is really very difficult to study Panini's grammar, and the person who masters it really deserves a great award. And we are also informed in this report that children were made to recite this grammar for 8 months. And there are a few more things also about Panini, that he was called Rushi. And one of these two, I don't know whether it was I Ching or it was Yuan Chang, but one of them also saw statues of Panini. Thus, Panini's grammar came to be handed down through generations, and it became very popular because it received Rajashray, obviously. The accounts also inform us that Panini was, yes, as I told you, was called a Rushi. Apart from the Ashtadhyayi, no other work is composed by Panini. I mean, we are not aware of it. However, according to a verse cited in Rajashekara, cited by Rajashekara from Jallana's Sukti Muktavali, Panini also composed a poem called Jambavati Vijayam. And the verse goes like this: Namah Paninaye Tasmai Yasmad Avirabhud Iho Adau Vyakaranam Kavyam Anu Jambavati Jayam. And then there is a verse, very well-known verse, and well-known, the story is known to all of us. This verse is from Panchatantra, which tells us the sad story of the tragic death of this great grammarian by a lion's attack. Simho Vyakaranasya Karturaharat Pranan Priyan Paninihi. Of course, it is very difficult to verify the truth behind this story. However, it reveals Panini's intense engagement with his grammar, which made him oblivious about its surroundings. There are a few more references to Panini's life and town, and well, of course, I am not going to be exhaustive by any means. This is just a brief information about Panini's life and time, but a lot of information is already available on the internet and also in publications. So those who are interested in more details can go through this. Now I turn to the next point, Panini in traditional setting. And I have already briefly summed up a few points regarding the development of grammatical thought prior to Panini and his influence on later grammatical tradition. On the basis of all this information which we have received, if we try to situate him within the whole linguistic tradition of India, we find that with the rise of Panini on the horizon, the previous grammars, such as those of Shakatayana, Shakalya, Vishali, Sputayana, Garga, Gallava, etc., they lost their eminence and they disappeared so much so that they are extant only in stray references. The same thing happened to later grammars also. Later grammatical schools, I should say, though large in number, they met with the same fate. So Panini eclipsed pre-Paninian grammatical systems, and he also eclipsed post-Paninian grammatical schools. And recent surveys of Sanskrit studies throughout the country show that except a couple of places, such as I think a part of Bengal and perhaps some part in Kashmir, Paninian system continues to be studied in Pathashalas as well as schools and universities. But there are still a couple of places where systems like, Katantra, perhaps Katantra, I'm not sure, but Vopadeva's Mugdhabodha are still in vogue. Vyakarana is still being taught with the help of these non-Paninian grammars. Paninian system is described as Trimuni Vyakarana, a school of grammar headed by three sages, Panini, Katyayana, and Patanjali. Both Katyayana and Patanjali have critically examined Panini's rules, though not all of them, some of them, with a view to finding out whether it was competent enough to explain the usage and also whether the rules were phrased correctly and precisely. Both these Munis mention in the course of their discourse some interesting observations about Panini. Sometimes these references talk about history, sometimes, or rather many times, they express their own opinion about Panini. For instance, Upasedivam Kautsaha Paninim and Iha Pushyamitram Yajayamaha, etc., etc. Such historical references are there. Of course, Iha Pushyamitram Yajayamaha is a historical reference which has a relevance to Patanjali, of course. Then Dakshiputra, as I talked to you earlier. But Patanjali cites a sentence which again has a historical relevance, and that is Akumaram Yashah Paninehi. So Panini's fame is extended up to the children. Now, when we say up to children, does it mean that children are excluded? So children don't know anything about Panini, and those who are above children, no, that is not the case. This particular example is deliberately put to show that even children were acquainted with Panini's fame. So the particle here is inclusive. Maryada and Abhividhi are the two meanings of as given by Panini. So here the meaning Abhividhi is understood, and this appears as an example of used in the sense of Abhividhi. So including children, the fame has extended. This sentence, of course, reminds us of the account of that Chinese traveler who tells us that the children during those times, during Panini's times, they were made to recite Panini's grammar for 8 months. Then the Bhashyakara exclaims at a place, Shobhana Khulu Panini Sutrasya Kriti. Beautiful indeed is the composition of the sutra by Panini. Another spontaneous articulation of Panini's appreciation as Analpamati, having infinite intelligence, appears in the Karika cited in the Bhashya. Tad Analpamater Vachanam Smarata. Panini is also addressed as Bhagavan, also as Acharya, and rarely as Kavi. In fact, the last Vartika on the last rule of the Ashtadhyayi, says Bhagavataha Paninehe Siddham. So this is the accomplishment of Lord Panini. And this comes from the mouth of Katyayana. Katyayana is generally understood as Panini's critique. But even then, he finally describes him as Bhagavan. While acknowledging Panini's authority, Bhashyakara at one place says, and this particular passage is very well known among the students of Vyakarana. He says, and I quote from Patanjali, Pramanabhutaha Acharyaha Darbha Pavitra Panihi Shuchau Avakashe Pramukha Upavishya Mahata Prayatnena Sutrani Pranayati Sma Tatra Ashakyam Varnenapi Anarthakena Bhavitum Kim Punaha Yata Sutreno. So somebody is questioning the very necessity of a particular sutra, and Patanjali got irritated. And then he says, Acharya, the revered teacher, who is acknowledged as authority, put a ring of sacred grass in his finger, Dharma Vaitara Panihi, sat down facing towards east in a purified place, Shuchau Avakashi, and then he composed sutras with great effort. Therefore, it is not possible even for a single letter to be worthless, useless, far less for a whole sutra. So this shows Patanjali's deep faith in Pani. Of course, I have come across a few places in Mahabhashya where Patanjali, straight away rejects Panini's sutras, Pratyakhanam. And at one place, I remember, every time whenever Panini uses cha, he tries to justify it in this way or that way. But then it appears that he is fed up with this business of justification of cha. And then finally at one place he says, Sarve chakarah pratyakhyayam. So Patanjali is also a critic of Panini. On the one hand, he praises Panini for all his efforts in creating sutras, but on the other hand, he relentlessly rejects some of his sutras, even words, and he even splits them, and he says this sutra should not have been there and it should have been there, and so on and so forth. Moreover, regarding the word Acharya also, I must tell you that the word Acharya is not confined to Panini. Sometimes Patanjali uses it also to refer to Katyayana and perhaps to earlier teachers. And this word appears in singular as well as in plural, but wherever it appears, it does reflect respect, reverence, whenever it refers to Panini, towards Panini. I may cite a couple of more references in the Bhashya, which I find very interesting and at the same time important. At one place, Patanjali says, Iho ingitena, cheshtitena, nimishitena, महता वा सूत्र प्रबंधेन आचार्याणाम अभिप्रायो लक्ष्यते. With reference to this, the intention, the purpose of the revered teacher is indicated by ingita, a purposeful gesture, or cheshtita, some action, some movement, nimishita, winking of the eyes, or by a composition of a long statement. So Acharya teaches you not just by sutras. Sometimes he keeps silent, and it is his body language which teaches. This might be the purport of this passage. This is, according to me, a very important comment on Panini's methodology, which comes as a precept or an instruction for the future students of Panini, and it kind of suggests that in order to understand the real purport of Panini, it is not enough to understand the meaning of the sutras alone. The student has to merge himself, to merge his personality with Panini's personality. He has to go as close to Panini as possible in order to understand the meaning of his body language. So Panini teaches also through the language. And as a student of several years, I also have experience that Panini sometimes teaches many things beyond this, beyond this sutra points. And therefore, Katyayana also says at one places, at one place, Charya Charat Sajna Siddhi. And this comes from Katyayana to Vruddhiradaish. And the rule says Vruddhi is the name of A, I, O. This is how we understand. But Panini simply says Vruddhi is Adai. Or reverse the order, and we have to reverse it in order to understand the rule correctly. So it says A, I, O, R, Vruddhi. Now the question raised in this context is, how do you know that this is a Saujna Sutra? How do we know that Vruddhi is a Saujna? And therefore, Katyayana makes the first remark, Saujnadhikarah Kartavyaha. Panini should have said as the heading of this section, at the very top of this section, Saujnadhikarah Kartavyaha, Saujnadhikarah, Atha Saujnyaha, and then Vruddhiradesh. That is the only way to understand that Vruddhiradesh is a Saujna Sutra. And then further, Katyayana himself gives a reply and rejects this proposal. He says, Acharya Charat Saujnasi. He says that the very behavior, the very conduct, the very practice of the Sutrakara is enough to tell us that this is a Saujna Sutra. So there are many things Panini leaves to his students common sense. He doesn't expressly state these things. And this even Katyayana admits. And therefore, Patanjali also derives from Panini's expressions many rules of interpretation, which are not directly stated by Panini, but they are applicable throughout its system. And they are known as Jnapakas. Since Patanjali says, and many times he says, this particular phrase appears in the Bhashya so many times, Acharya Pravrittihi Jnapayati. The conduct of the teacher suggests so and so. So we have to understand the conduct of the teacher. And on different occasions, Patanjali further describes many different facets of Panini's personality. At one place, he says, Swatantrechasya Munehe. So he calls Panini Swatantrecha Muni. He is a sage of independent will. Nobody can question him. So somebody asks the question, why did Panini use this word? And Patanjali replies, you have no right to ask him why he chose this word and why didn't he use this particular word. Because he is Swatantrecha. Swatantrechasya Munehe Paryanu Yuga Yuga. It is improper to ask him a question. Why you used this word in this particular sutra? Similarly, in a different context, Patanjali says, Acharyaha Surudbhutva Achash. So Panini is very kind to his students. He becomes very friendly with the students and he speaks. We have to find out such occasions. Patanjali says, but I have never come across any sutra in Panini's grammar which tells me that Panini is very friendly with his students. Anyway, and it is more interesting to note that when Patanjali comes across a minor lapse, a small mistake pointed out by one of his students, every Annika of Patanjali's Mahabhashya, I always take it as a classroom lecture. And Patanjali is teaching his students, and there are students sitting in front of him, and one of them is asking him a question. And he says, oh, don't you think Panini has committed a mistake in this particular expression? Panini is wrong. And Patanjali sometimes doesn't have any answer to give, and Patanjali is fully convinced that yes, Panini shouldn't have said like this. And then he says, very softly, he says, Idam ekam acharyasya mrushyatam. This one of the teachers should be tolerated. Panini is after all a human being, and it's quite human to her. So why don't you understand this? So this is how Patanjali looks at Panini. And there is Kashika, which is a later text, the very first available full-fledged commentary on the Ashtadhyayi, probably belonging to the 6th century. And in this text also, we sometimes come across remarks in appreciation of Panini. Thus it is said at one place, Mahati Sukshmekshika Vartate Sutrakarasya. Here indeed is an instance of a very minute observation of the Sutrakar. And yes, we do come across Mahati Sukshmekshika quite, I should say, throughout the Ashtadhyayi. I always salute Panini for his Sukshmekshika. So, friends, this is a very brief sketch of Panini in the traditional setting, which shows that Panini was held in high esteem by his followers who were opposed to any attempt of questioning his authority. Of course, my intention in giving you all these details also is to set the background for the next lectures and to convince you of the greatness of Panini. Of course, you are free to ask questions and challenge Panini's phrasing of rules and his statements. But at the same time, what I expect of you, all of you, is to have good respect for Panini. Now, I would like to quote a few citations from modern scholars who attribute some new features to his grammar. These citations come from different scholars like Bloomfield, who belong to the last century, and Bloomfield's statement is very well known among the students and scholars of grammar. He glorifies Panini's grammar as one of the greatest monuments of human intelligence. And then there are many other scholars like Paul Thieme and so many others. Recently, George Cardona, another great linguist of today, he describes Panini's grammar as the pinnacle of achievements in the field of Sanskrit grammar. So it's not only the tradition, but even the modern scholarship. The scholars who approach Panini with modern tools of research, they also come up with the same conclusion about Panini. This is the fact I want to point out. And they have discovered some new facets which tradition could not find. And these facets are again very interesting. A French scholar, a French Indologist, P. Filiosa, talks about Panini's grammar, and he has written a very good book on Sanskrit language. He says Panini's grammar is the first and the foremost example of formalization of a technical exposition in the universal history of science. So Panini is now raised to the status of being a universal personality. Then Paul Kiparsky, another linguist of great eminence, who is always all in praise for Panini, has written extensively on Panini's technique of description. And often he talks about Panini in high appreciation. So here is just one quote from him. And he says, and I quote, theoretical linguists from all persuasions are further impressed by its means of the Ashtadhyayis, Panini's grammars, remarkable conciseness and rigorous consistency with which it deploys its semi-formalized meta-language. And Kiparsky further states how the ingenious technical devices and intricate system of conventions governing Panini's rules of application seem to uncannily anticipate ideas of modern linguistic theory. So again, Kiparsky raises Panini to a universal status. And finally, I quote from Hartmut Scharfe, another Paninian scholar from the West, and he says, and I quote, Panini Ashtadhyayi was not a device to create Sanskrit sentences, which is generally understood, but it is wrongly understood according to him. But Ashtadhyayi was an iconic representation of the sacred language. What does this icon consist of? A computational structure. And there are many more references to Panini's grammar going very close to computer programming and all that. And there are references to Panini's grammar being compared to Turing machine and many Bach's formula and all that. And all these details I'm not going to give right now. Well, as I told you, if you want me to talk about Panini as a mathematician or Panini's grammar and computer science, then perhaps we can talk more about it. And so I now come to my final point, some features of Panini's grammar. In fact, there are many special features of Panini's grammar. Some of them have already been mentioned in the quotes which I cited just now. However, I want to stress some features of Panini's grammar before it is introduced to us. It is well known as the oldest, the first and the foremost, and at the same time, the most perfect available grammar so far. It deals with a spoken language. Generally, I mean, the grammars available of the past, the grammars of the past that are available to us, I mean, even Greek grammar, they say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they were based on written texts. But Panini's grammar, even in the Indian background, speaks of the spoken language for the first time. Because earlier grammatical texts like Shikshas and even Nirukta, which is very close to grammar, they talk about Vedic language. They do not deal with the spoken language. But Panini for the first time, and therefore we can say that Panini brought this Vagdevi of the Vedic Aryans down to the earth, and he made it appear as simply Vak or Vach or speech. Although Indian tradition calls Panini's grammar a Vedanga, being at the service of the Vedic language, the study of this grammar clearly reveals that it mainly deals with the spoken language and only occasionally with the Vedic language. And this reminds me of the controversy still going on among the Paninian scholars and also among the Indologists regarding whether Sanskrit ever was a spoken language. But in my opinion, Panini's grammar itself is perhaps the only, but is a great testimony to the fact that Sanskrit was very much spoken during Panini's time. Well, some scholars say that it was spoken, but it was spoken only among the priests or among the high class. But then I have several questions which I don't put right now. And I always feel that the language which Panini describes, it may not appear to be a market language or a mother tongue, but still it was spoken at large. It was spoken by common people. Well, we can discuss this issue later if we really feel like going into the depth of this issue. So this language which Panini describes must be spoken in and around the area in which Panini lived. And sometimes Panini also mentions certain nuances from neighboring areas like the east and the north. He often mentions Pranch and Udich. So these two northern and eastern areas he refers to, and he describes that, well, this particular word is used in the eastern dialect in such and such a way, and so on and so forth. That also is one of the peculiarities of this grammar. This grammar represents, because it deals for the first time with the spoken language. Obviously, it represents the first secular, should I say writing? I don't know, but secular composition, I should say, because I don't know whether script did exist during Panini's time or not, or whether he wrote his grammar. Although I think this picture shows that he was writing, we are not sure whether script really existed during Panini's time. The literature preceding Panini is that is available to us is all Vedic or sacred literature, and therefore against this background we can say that Panini is the first secular author, thinker, writer, whatever you call him. Then Panini's grammar is descriptive. It is not prescriptive. It does not dictate or command. It simply narrates. Panini never says you must do this or you ought to do this. There is no chodana lakshan ortho dharma. There is no prerana. There is no ajna. There is no lot. There is no let. But Panini simply says asti drishyate. If at all he uses a verb, otherwise he never uses any verb in his sutras at all. But if at all he uses any verb, the verb is drishyate. This is what is seen among the people. Obviously, this feature which I'm going to talk to you about is known to all of you, that it is composed in a sutra style, which was adopted by almost all ancient founders of knowledge systems, because it was the need of the time. The sutra mode of expression, it consists in the shortest possible expression of a large content. It was the need of the time, and it was a mnemonic device. The sutra mode of style was quite suitable for memorization, and memorization was the method of education followed during those times. And therefore, the extent of the Ashtadhyayi is very short. If you try to recite the whole text of the Ashtadhyayi in one sitting, it may not take, I think it may not take more than 2 hours. As a requisite for sutra mode, Panini developed a special meta language, technical language, consisting of technical terminology, abstract formulae, abbreviations, abbreviatory notations, mechanism, and artificial technical terminology. And this gives the Paninian language of sutras an appearance of a code language. So I found an article saying that Panini was a precursor to Morse, who was the first to give us code language. Then brevity of expression being the most primary objective. Economy was the main aim of Panini while composing his grammar. So he has composed his sutras as algebraic formulae. The grammar is described as a generative system. It generates words which are used in speech, but it is not generative in the technical sense in which it is used in linguistics these days. That can be, again, further discussed later. It is also therefore described as a derivational system. So the mode of Panini's grammar is basically derivational. It is a Shabdanushasana, derivation of words. But I'm going to discuss all these issues in my subsequent talks when I'll be dealing with the sutras of the grammar uh, on different topics. So, friends, I stop here. I thank you very much for giving me a patient listening. Perhaps you are all put on mute, and therefore I say patient listening. But maybe if you want to continue with any interaction, I will be very happy to listen to your views. Thank you once again.
I think if there are any questions, participants may just unmute and ask the question. Please note that the chat box facility is not available, so you will have to ask your questions by unmuting your microphone. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Could you recommend any book of Panini's All the History in Marathi?
पाणिनीय व्याकरणाचे अंतरंग by Pandit Vaba Bhagwat Shastri.
Okay, thank you.
It's a book you can find it perhaps in Maharashtra Vidyapith if it is not out of order, out of stock.
Okay, thank you, Thai.
Why don't you mention your name so that I can understand who the listeners are?
It's Advaita Kulkarni.
Okay. Thank you.
Namo Nama.
Yes.
My name is Vivek, and
Yes.
thank you very much for such a thoughtful lecture. I have one question. Could you please say more about the relationships between Sanskrit and Pali?
That is not my area of study. I can direct this question to Mahesh, and Mahesh can talk about Sanskrit and Pali, because my knowledge of Pali is close to nothing, I should say. Although I taught Pali grammar to some students, including Mahesh. That was long ago. But maybe Mahesh can perhaps enlighten us.
I think probably we can keep this question for another occasion. Let people ask questions regarding Panini's grammar. Maybe we can conduct some special session about this later on. But yes, I mean, if there are any other questions, madam, if you allow me to ask one from my side, can I ask you to say a few things about what do you think? I mean, is Paninian grammar a compilation or a composition? Because there are a few scholars who also believe that there is no uniformity in the phrasing of the sutras throughout Ashtadhyayi. So what is your opinion on this?
Almost all scholars actually believe in that. What you say is that it's a compilation, but it's not a very rough compilation, I should say. Panini must have collected some information from his sutras, from the previous sutras. He must have collected the data from the sutras which existed earlier, like Apishali and others. But you know, the finishing touch is that of Panini, and that finishing touch actually removes all the characteristics of the previous grammarians. They are sporadically seen in some sutras. They appear in some sutras. But it's not a very rough, unordered, unorganized compilation so that you don't understand anything out of it. And it appears to be, you know, just some sutras from Apishali and some sutras from Senapa, and they are put together. It's not like that. He has very carefully rearranged them he has very carefully drafted them. I should not say redrafted, but he had drafted them. I mean, those contents which he received from the previous grammarians in his own terminology. So he has presented this material which he received from the earlier grammars in his own words, in his own terminology. And he has really worked very hard on that. So in a way, it is a compilation because, I think whenever there is a long tradition, a person who is preceded by such a long tradition and wants to create his own work, then he always stands on the shoulders of his predecessors. So that happened to Panini also. But that doesn't mean that it is a mere compilation. He has quoted from his predecessors sometimes whenever he found that they differed from his views. And therefore, they appear in his grammar. But it is a very, very perfect reworking on the existing data. And this is what even the Chinese travelers also have reported, that Panini was concerned with the problem of improving upon the previous grammars, which were, kind of in a cumbrous state. They were rather very large, maybe perhaps not properly organized. His aim was different. His aim was to recapitulate the fundamentals of language in such a manner that it is easier for anyone to memorize them. And therefore, he developed his own meta-language in which he, put the whole data. Am I clear, Mahesh?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ma'am. Namaste, ma'am.
Yeah.
This is about the Shiva Sutra, these 14 sutras, which is the foundation of the beginning of the Ashtadhyayi, Panini and grammar. They are not written by Panini as it is named, but it is perhaps existed before, or it might have been discovered. I don't know how. Can you
I'm
please
sorry.
enlighten-
I'm sorry
Can
to
you-
interrupt you. I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you, but will you please say it once again, because I'm not really able to listen to you properly. I cannot understand. So
About
will you
this
please
14 these 14 Shiva Sutras, that is the
tell?
basic
Yes.
14 Sutras, which is said to be coming out of Damaru of the Shiva.
Yeah.
Can you enlighten us more about these sutras, whether it is really envisaged by Panini or it was existed earlier and he only repeated it, or why it is called Shiva Sutra?
Well, they are called Shiva Sutra obviously because the anecdote tells us that they come from the Damaru of Shiva, and therefore they are traditionally, generally, popularly known as Shiva Sutras. But those who don't believe in gods and divine, happenings, for them this is just an anecdote. And yes, true. So they are Shiva Sutras for those who believe in such things. But for those who don't believe it in this, they're obviously composed by Panini. I'm going to talk more about Shiva Sutras in one of my lectures later on. Why are they, arranged in this particular manner? But yes, I believe that they are certainly composed by Panini. Not only that, but sometimes the Shiva Sutras, as they are present today and available to us, may not have been the sutras which Panini composed. This also is my observation, which I may tell you later on. They were not, but they were perhaps less than 14. But in my opinion,
I just request all
Hello.
the
Hello.
participants, when you ask questions, please announce your names.
Yes.
Manya Namo Namaha.
Sorry, I
Hello.
could not get it. Sorry.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Can you? Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. There are many persons are waiting. They have raised their hand to ask questions. So I think we should take one by one. So those who want to ask question, first raise your hand and then unmute yourself and ask your question. So Professor Srikant Bahulkar sir is waiting for asking questions. Sir, please, you can ask question now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Bhatte, for your very clear, lucid explanation of Panini, the introduction to Panini. You mentioned that Panini's grammar is based on, or he has consulted the previous grammars. And we do find references to previous grammarians. But Panini's system is a unique one based on his Pratyahara Sutras. When he incorporated some of the sutras of previous acharyas, previous teachers, how could he do that? Because my question is, did the Pratyahara Sutras or something like that exist before Panini? And if so, what was the nature of that?
I think, Professor Bahulkar, I have partly answered your question while answering the very first question. And that is, Mahesh asked whether it is a compilation or an independent composition. Panini did borrow data from his predecessors, but he did not quote the sutras from his predecessors ad verbatim. He reworked on the data, he reworked on the sutras, and he put them in his own language. So the pratyaharas they belong to Panini. I really don't know whether pratyaharas existed before Panini or not, because we don't have any concrete evidence to prove for or against this. But whatever material Panini received from his predecessors was redrafted by Panini in his own language. So pratyaharas he used for maybe some earlier expressions used, different expressions used by his predecessors. The term pratyahara not used by Panini at all anywhere. Panini simply uses it. It's a later term. And we really don't know whether such kind of abbreviatory, notations or terms, they were used by earlier grammarians.
You do find some references, for example, Avang Sphotayanasya. Here, yes. the technical term Avang.
Yes.
So it must have been used by Spotayana. Similarly, there could be something like that. That's why I have been wondering about this. How, what kind of grammars existed before him and what kind of technical terms the grammarians used.
Yes. First of all, Avang as an it sound like a m, it is not a pratyahara. So your question about pratyahara is ruled out so far as Avang is concerned. Okay. And then pratyahara is a different thing, and it or anubandha is a different. So this it sound like a m may or may not have existed when Spotayana wrote his grammar. Once again, I say that Avang is Panini's creation of maybe Ava or something in the original Spotayana's. So we need not necessarily think that Avang comes from Spotayana. it is Panini's recreation. And that is because it is needed for his technique. The Anubandha Ng has some function, and Panini wants our to abide by that function, and therefore he attaches the Anubandha Ng to Avang. We do not have any evidence to prove that there was one grammarian, Skutayana, who mentioned Avang in his sutra. On the contrary, we have very clear evidence to show that the Anubandha Ng very much existed in Panini's grammar, and it performed a certain function which Ava has to perform. Now, secondly, I do not have any evidence, or I haven't come across any evidence of any pratyaharas existing before Panini. But yes, in the Nirukta, there is a reference to Ang. As far as I remember, you can check it out. But I vaguely remember, I don't have the text right now before me, but someone can look into the text later. But there is a reference to Ang Upasarga, which means that Yaska was perhaps aware of this Anubandha Ng. But that is the singular example. That's the only example where we come across the Anubandha Ng. Otherwise, I have checked in Rupprati Shakya. I haven't come across any so far. So this Pratyahara technique, we should ascribe to Panini.
Very good. Thank you very much. It's very clear now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I assure you that in the course of my talks later on, things will be more clear because we are directly dealing with the sutras. And then there is much more scope to discuss these things about technique and methodology.
Yes, now next, Mr. Bill Mack, please ask your question.
Namo Namaha. This is Bill Mack. It's very nice to see you, Professor Bhate.
Very nice to listen to you. I can't see you, Bill. I would have been happier. Anyway, no, I can't see anyone. I see only Panini on my screen.
My question is, could you say a few words about the current status of Paninian studies in India? The reason why I ask is that whether it's in the West or in India, I believe a lot of students are learning Sanskrit from modern methods with modern grammar books. So is the Ashtadhyayi still being studied widely, or is it a very much specialized study? And also, I wonder if you could have a reading list for us who would like to benefit your lectures in the upcoming weeks. Thank you.
Bill, honestly, I don't have any very, very clear idea about the status of Paninian studies in India and abroad at present. But from whatever I know, I can tell you that Paninian studies, or even the studies of Sanskrit Shastra, they have taken a backseat these days. For obvious reason, of course. Even Sanskrit studies, they are going on in many universities. There is more emphasis, more focus on classical literature. Shastras, they don't want to study, mainly because there are no competent teachers also. Whatever, study of Panini's grammar is going on these days in this country is mainly in a few pathashalas and in a very, very few universities. And I'm afraid there are very few scholars who are very seriously doing any research in Panini at present. And yes, in the West, there are, I have mentioned some of them, there are some scholars, of course, working on, and there are many more, I haven't mentioned all of them. But the approaches differ. Western scholars' approach is more oriented towards, other dimensions. It's not text-based. Whereas the study going on among the Indian institutes, universities, and in this Indian scholars who are working on Ashtadhyayi, they are concentrating more on the texts. This is my understanding. And as far as the list of reference books you're asking about, read all books by Cardona. And Cardona's bibliography is the best guide to you. Panini, A Survey of Research by George Cardona. Volume 1 and Volume 2. The title of the second volume is something different, which I forgot, but you can find it out. Then there are several articles by Paul Kiparsky, but I think it needs a thorough knowledge of Panini's Ashtadhyayi in order to understand that. Then I have written a very small book on Panini, which is again very, very introductory, and perhaps that can give you some insight into what we are going to talk about in the next lectures. And that book is entitled Panini. It is published by Sahitya Akademi. It's a very small booklet. I don't know whether it is available in the market. I have one copy. If anyone can make a PDF, I can just send the PDF to all of you, those who are in need of it. But I cannot do it myself. There are many other publications, but if you want to read them, they presuppose a lot of knowledge of Panini. They are more, research material, kind of.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhate.
Yes. Now next participant, Mr. Ashish Athawale, please ask your question.
मान्य नमो नमः. मम ध्वनिः श्राव्यः वा?
अवश्यं श्रोतुं शक्यते.
आम्. महोदय नमो नमः. रत्नागिरितः आशिषः अधिवक्ता अस्मि. महाविद्यालये MA संस्कृतं विषयम् अधिकृत्य पठामि. भवती मध्ये उक्तवती यद् पाणिनीयव्याकरणं मौखिकपरम्परा आधारेण अग्रे आगतमिति. तदा यदा सः पाणिनीयव्याकरणम् इति यत्किमपि अस्ति तत् यदा सः प्रतिपादितवान् तदा लिपि वा तथा तादृशं किमपि स्यात् वा न इति प्रश्नः विद्यते. तस्य मण्डनार्थं कोऽपि सन्दर्भः अस्ति चेत् वक्तुं शक्यते वा? तथैव नाम अग्रे गत्वा मम प्रश्नः एवमस्ति, यदि तस्मिन् काले यदि लिपि वा तथा किमपि स्क्रिप्ट् यद् नास्ति न आसीत् तर्हि तदनन्तरं मौखिकपरम्परायां पाणिनीयव्याकरणस्य किं डैल्यूटेशन् अभवत् वा इति तदर्थं कोऽपि अस्ति तद्विषये किमपि वक्तुं शक्यते चेत् कृपया.
मया यदुक्तं मौखिकपरम्परा विषये तत् एवम् अस्ति. पाणिनीयव्याकरणं वेदाङ्गम् इति कृत्वा वैदिकैः तस्य पठनं कृतम्. अतः अद्य यावत् ये दशग्रन्थिनः वैदिकाः वेदपठनं कुर्वन्ति तेषां स्वाध्याये अन्तर्भूतं पाणिनीयं व्याकरणम्. अतः तत् मौखिकपरम्परया अपि रक्षितं वर्तते. परम् एतावता इदं न मन्तव्यं यत् पाणिनीयव्याकरणं लिखितपरम्परायां नैव उपलभ्यते इति. परसहस्रं हस्तलिखितानि पाणिनीयव्याकरणस्य न केवलम् अस्मिन् भारतवर्षे किन्तु भारतवर्षात् बहिः अपि नैकेषु स्थानेषु वर्तन्ते. अतः न केवलं मौखिकपरम्परया पाणिनीयव्याकरणस्य अस्तित्वम् अस्माभिः अनुमातव्यम् इति नियमः न वर्तते. भवताम् अन्यः प्रश्नः लिपिसम्बद्धः वर्तते. तत्र लिपिविषये अद्यावधि महान् कोलाहलः तत्र नैकेषु विद्वत्सु विद्वत्समाजेषु प्रवर्तते कस्मिन् खलु कालखण्डे लिपिः भारतवर्षे आसीदिति। तत्र यत् मतं सामान्यतः स्वीकृतं वर्तते तदनुसारेण क्रिस्ताब्दात् पूर्वम् 8मे शतके काचन लिपिः तत्र आसीत् इति अनुमातुं शक्यते। परम् एतावता लिपिः लेखनार्थम् उपयुक्ता तदात्वे विद्वद्भिः इति अस्माभिः अनुमातुं न शक्यते, यतः वैदिकवाङ्मयं लेखने ग्रन्थबद्धं कर्तव्यम् इत्यस्याः कल्पनायाः महान् विरोधः आसीत्। लिखितपाठकः अधमः इति उच्यते। अतः वेदानामपि वेदवाङ्मयस्य लेखनं न कर्तव्यम् इति आसीत् धार्मिकः कश्चन नियमः। अतः तत्र केचन विद्वांसः एवं मन्यते यत् 11 शताब्देः अनन्तरम् एव वेदग्रन्थानां लेखनम् आरब्धम् इति। अत्र विषये प्रायः बहुलकर महोदयः अधिकं जानन्ति, अतः यदि ते अस्मिन् विषये किमपि प्रबोधयेयुः सर्वेषाम् उपकाराय तद्भवेत्। परं यथा अहं जानामि पाणिनिना व्याकरणं लिखितम् इति अस्माभिः निश्चयेन न वक्तुं शक्यते। प्रत्युत परम्परा अपि एवमेव मनुते यत् तेन व्याकरणं यत् शब्दबद्धं कृतं तत् स्मृतौ बन्धार्थम् एव तथा तेन विरचितम् इति। अन्यत् कः प्रश्नः?
न यदि तद् मौखिकपरम्परा आधारेण अग्रे आगतं तर्हि तत्र नाम किं प्रक्षिप्त इति वदामः तस्य प्रोबेबिलिटी कियत् अस्ति वा तथा?
प्रक्षेपास्तु हस्तलेखेषु अपि अस्माभिः द्रष्टुं शक्यन्ते।
आमां तावदेव।
बहवः प्रक्षेपाः सन्ति।
भवतु मान्यः, धन्यवादाः।
मौखिकपरम्परायां ते प्रक्षेपाः परम्परा कारणं वर्तते इति न वक्तुं शक्यते।
आमाम् आम्। अस्तु, धन्यवादाः।
अस्तु।
Okay. Next participant who raised his hand, Mr. Gavin, please ask your question.
Hello, Professor. Thank you for your lecture. I'm speaking from the UK.
We are very sorry. I can't hear you. There is a lot of noise on your side.
Can you hear me now? Am I clear?
Your sound is breaking, sir.
Okay, well then we have to forget it. I'm speaking from the UK, so maybe it is too far or the internet connection is not good enough.
Can anyone hear what he says?
No, madam, his voice is breaking. I don't think she is. Yeah, her voice is breaking. Yeah.
I think there's some internet issue, so maybe we can move on to the next question, maybe, and we can come back to Gavin later on.
Yeah.
Can you please ask text the question and send it to me? Can you text your question and send it to me?
No, it's okay. I will try next time. Next Saturday, maybe.
Yes.
You can't hear me, right?
I'm so sorry, I can't.
What to do? Kya karega? Can I try one more time.
Hello.
Chala, we can go to the next question because
Yes,
I think
yes,
there is a serious issue.
Yeah,
with it.
now next participant is Divesh Shah. Mr. Divesh Shah.
Namaste, ma'am. Yes, yes. Am I audible?
Yes, clearly, yeah.
Okay. Namaste, ma'am. I am Devesh Shah. Right now, studying Sanskrit in Pune University. And my question is that you have mentioned about two Chinese traveler account, and one of them, as I loosely remember, says that before entering in India, one should familiarize themselves with Sanskrit in today's Indonesia and other countries like Cambodia and all. So, do we find any post-Paninian grammar system there? And if there is, what is its nature as such?
I could not understand any connection between these Chinese travelers and post-Paninian. What exactly you want to ask? Do you want to ask me whether the Chinese travelers mentioned any post-Paninian grammar?
No. Question is that the Sanskrit study or teaching methods were also in use in today's Java and Sumatra in ancient times. So, do we see a different tradition of Sanskrit grammar developing in their own land as such?
About that, I don't have any idea. But yes, what you say is very correct. That even Yuan Chuang was required to learn Sanskrit, and he learned it in a place called Tamralipti, and that is somewhere in Indonesia. So Sanskrit was very much being taught there. He studied Sanskrit as a language, and he wanted to speak in Sanskrit. So before coming to India, he studied it there. This much I know. But whether there was any post-Paninian grammar available in Indonesia and other places, I have no idea. I am very sorry.
Can I answer this question, please?
Please.
Yeah. As we know, there are a number of Sanskrit works, not only Buddhist but non-Buddhist works on grammar and prosody and other sciences that migrated to China and also other countries. And in China, there was a tradition of studying Sanskrit and various sciences in Sanskrit. So it is quite possible that the Chinese travelers before coming to India studied Sanskrit in China. And we do find references to that. And there is a very interesting book by Sarosh Kumar Chowdhury from Delhi, Sanskrit in China and Japan, where he has dealt with this topic. So you can find some more information there.
Good. Thank you. But as I said, I have read this particular reference to Tamralipti. And that was a place in Indonesia where one of these Chinese travelers mastered his spoken Sanskrit before coming to India. This is what I have read somewhere. Perhaps Bill Mack also can enlighten us on this issue. I don't know. But such things, they appear in these reports of their travels.
Yes, may I add to that? This is Bill Mack. I'm Professor Bate. I think a very good reference on this is also Fritz Stahl's reader on the Sanskrit grammarians. And yes, he has a very good synopsis of the records of Xuanzang and Yi Jing. So I think there's some question about the exact location of Tamra Lipi, where exactly that is. Xuanzang was mainly in India. And our understanding of Sanskrit grammar from Xuanzang's writing is really what he learned from India before coming back to China. So we don't actually have much understanding, at least in the written records, of Sanskrit grammars in earlier writing, other than just understanding of Sanskrit orthography, which is understood as Siddham, the study of Siddham or Siddhamatrika script.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes, thank you, Bill. Thank you very much.
Yes, madam. Now no one is remained to ask questions, so no one is waiting in the lobby. No one raised his hand. So
Okay.
yeah.
Tell me what you people want me to do.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, if there are no more questions, then maybe
Sir, no. Yeah.
yeah, we can probably also stop here. Or if there are any last minute questions, please ask. Otherwise, we can wind up today's session and then can prepare ourselves for the next Saturday.
Now no questions, sir.
No questions. Okay. So
Yeah.
then maybe let's just thank Professor Bhate for her talk today. And I think it has set up the stage now for the following lectures, and where we will kind of enter more into deeper waters, I should say, of Paninian grammar. So thank you very much to all of you and for joining in. And then I also thank Professor Bhate for such a wonderful and very nicely spaced talk, I should say, which is very good for beginners. So thank you very much. So please join us next Saturday at the same time, 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. IST, Indian Standard Time. And looking forward to seeing you next week. In between, I think I can try to get Professor Bhate's book from her and would try and do the scan of it with her permission, and then can circulate it.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Who
yes,
is Devesh Shah, please?
Devesh, yes. The book is available on archives. Ma'am's book is available on archives, already scanned.
Then
So
maybe you can just share a link. So those who want to read it can read it before the next class.
yes.
Yeah. If you can just send it to us by email, then we can share it with the group.
Okay, I will forward it on the email. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you very much once again to everybody. Have a nice weekend and see you next week. So,
thank you all.
Thank you.
For giving
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes.
All next Sunday.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.